Hey guys, it's CJ over at Airdog. Today we got a 2008 6.7 in for a DF-220-5G. We're going to get this thing opened up, show you the contents of what you're going to get in your kit, and then we'll get this truck pulled in, get it on the lifts, and show you what you need to do to install it. First thing I want you guys to notice when you receive your kit is there's going to be two stickers on top. One is going to say there's time-sensitive materials in it. This is going to be your warranty card. You're going to need to fill this out, send it back to us within 30 days. There's also going to be a seal that is, if broken, check contents before installation. Make sure nothing was lost in shipping, things like that, so you have everything needed to complete the install. So we're going to get it opened up here. So first thing when opening the box you're going to see is the supplied wiring harness. This installation, being a 220, will have two separate sizes of hose. So we're going to have a 5/8 section of hose. This will become our suction line. You're going to have some 1/2-inch hose. This will become your outlet line from the Airdog and the return. Also with the 220, we have a supplied 5/8 draw straw. This will also be a thread-on style bulk head fitting to ensure that it's nice and tight when installed in your tank. You'll have your installation manual, and in this packaging will be your warranty card as well as an included sticker. You're going to have your 5G pump itself. We're going to open this up in a little bit and show you a little bit more in depth on the 5G system. You're going to have your sandwich plates for your mounting. And then you're going to have your separate sub-assembly box. Included in this box is all the fittings needed to plumb your hose, your hardware kit to actually mount the pump to the frame, as well as your cradle bracket. So now that we have the 5G unboxed, I wanted to go over a couple key differences between this and our 4G product line. This is going to have a diaphragm fuel pressure regulator that is able to be boost compensated and adjust from 7 to 70 PSI all in one regulator assembly. We also opened up the inlet porting to a 3/4 16 thread, so this is a true -8, so easily adaptable to a -10 for your 5/8 suction. We also upgraded the return to a -4 return. What this allows for is if you guys want to go with custom AN setups, it's a lot easier to adapt it to this unit. And then now that we've went over some of the key differences, we're going to get this thing set in the cradle bracket so we can get approximate heights to get it mounted on the truck. So to locate your cradle bracket, it's going to be in your sub-assembly box. So we're going to open this up. In this box is going to be the needed fittings to assemble our hoses, the hardware kit to mount the Airdog. There'll be a customer service O-ring kit. This can replace every O-ring in the pump if needed. Some zip ties. The spacer block that'll go between your cradle bracket and your sandwich plate. And the cradle bracket itself. So we're going to get our bolt kit opened up here. Get our 1/4 bolts. Get the pump slid into the bracket and tighten it up. So now that we have the cradle bracket removed and your sub-assembly box opened up, we're going to mount this on the inside of the frame rail. So you're going to want to note that the suction side of the pump needs to be facing the tank. So that'll matter in the orientation in which you put it in the bracket. So we're going to slide it into the cradle bracket. One thing you're going to want to note is you need to make sure that you center this to where you can get both filters on and off. So what sometimes I like to do is take one filter off so you can hug the other one so you can kind of get an idea. And then put the bolts on the opposite side. So now that you have your Airdog mounted in your cradle bracket, it's going to be a little easier to install your base fittings here on the bench opposed to underneath the vehicle. We'll start with the suction fitting. Since this is a 220, we're going to use a JIC or like an AN style fitting. So you're going to thread your adapter fitting into your base. You're going to take a 15/16 to tighten that up. Then we're going to move on to our return and outlet fittings. start by putting our return fitting in. Taking your 7/8 wrench. Tightening that up. Then we're going to move over to our return fitting. Get this started in here, and then this is going to be a 9/16 wrench. You don't have to kill these guys. They are an O-ring seal, not like an MPT or anything. So just nice and snug is plenty. So we're going to get this tightened up. So now we have the base fittings installed in the Airdog. We're going to get underneath the truck and we're going to figure out what height hole we want to mount our pump, as the Airdog brackets are fully adjustable. So we'll kind of mock it up and see where we need to be. So now that we're under the vehicle, I have the adjustable height side of the cradle bracket and a couple bolts. What I like to do is slide it up approximately where you're going to go, and you can put these bolts in and it'll hold the bracket so we can get our height in which we need to mount the pump. We like to mount them as high as possible. Also know there'll be a spacer block, so these brake lines aren't super in the way. It's looking like we are going to be in this whole set here. So we'll go back over to the bench, get the cradle bracket bolted in this middle set here, and then get it mounted. So now you have your supplied flathead bolts removed out of your hardware kit. We're going from the second hole from the bottom here. So we're going to install our flathead bolts. Then the spacer block. And then just a little bit easier video here. We'll set it back on the table and start this hardware here. So we have supplied lock washer and nut. And then after we have all these started, we're going to use a 1/2 inch socket and a 3/16 Allen wrench to tighten these up. So now that we have our Airdog pump assembly mounted, we're going to get the bed prepped for removal, pull the bolts out, get any needed wiring removed, so we can remove that bed to install the draw straw. So in preparation for that, we're going to remove these torque screws to get the filler neck assembly loose. Then we're going to go under the truck, remove the bed bolts. We'll back into the 2-post lift and remove the bed. So now that we got the bed removed, we have full access to the top of the tank. We went ahead and cleaned it up a little bit. We're going to disconnect these fuel line connections as well as the electrical plug. That'll allow us access for when we're drilling to catch any shavings that may try to go into the tank, as well as tighten the jam nut on the draw straw. So we're going to get this all popped apart and get back with you guys once we're ready to drill the hole for the draw straw. Also, one important thing to note, if you are dropping the tank, do not forget to disconnect these connections before disconnecting your tank straps and lowering the tank. So to disconnect these fuel lines, they're rather simple. You're just going to want to press both sides of this clip and pull straight off. On your electrical connector, it is a locking style. You'll push the lock over and then just press your tab and pull off. We will utilize the factory wiring for our Airdog wiring harness, so we'll show you that in a little bit. So now we just need to get this lock ring off. You're basically going to take a screwdriver where it indexes in, or a small pry bar, and beat the ring around until it releases, and then you can remove it. Now that we have this removed, you're going to want to be careful of your fuel sending arm, so rotate it to get it out. Then we're going to set this right here in this pan off to the side.
We will have to modify this a little bit. Basically, the only modification we're going to need to do is cut this line, as this will become the Airdog return back to the module. This is the outlet of the factory lift pump, so we'll just cut that. The Airdog wiring harness will disable power to the fuel pump, and your returning fuel will go back into the module. So now we're going to determine where we need to mount our draw straw in the tank. So we want to keep in mind where the fuel arm is, so we don't have any clearance issues. So I'm going to kind of center this up so we can see where it would be. Also in this tank, there's a little tube that extends down from the filler neck, so we don't want to interfere with that. So it's looking like right here in the center is going to be a good location. We verified that we don't have any clearance issues once we have the fitting in here. So we're going to take a step bit, open this up to a 1-inch hole so we can get this test fitted down in there and determine the length we need to cut it. So now that we've located where we would like to drill our hole, I'm going to stick this small cup in here. To be truthful, it's off an aerosol can, works great, just to catch any shavings that may fall into the tank when drilling the hole. We're going to get all lined up here. So now that we've drilled our 1-inch hole, we need to determine how much length we need to trim from this drill straw. So you're going to want to measure from the top of the tank to this green sealing washer, and then you're going to want to subtract 1/8 of an inch to give you some gap from the bottom of the tank. As this tank's roughly a third full, so it's going to belly a little bit more with heavier fuel. So we want to make sure we have a decent amount of clearance, but at low fuel level, it's not tight to the bottom of the tank, restricting the suction. So now we determined that we need to trim this down 5 1/4 inches. Made a nice tape line so we could see where it needed to be. And we're actually going to drill some holes through the tube. So it almost makes kind of like a crown. So it's impossible for it to be completely on the bottom of the tank and suck to the bottom of the tank, but causing an inlet restriction. So we're going to start with a small pilot hole. And then we're going to step up to a larger drill bit. And then we're going to cut this to where the U's will not allow it to suck to the bottom of the tank. We'll clean these burrs up after we cut it. So now that we've drilled our holes, we're going to cut this. Then we're going to remove our tape and clean up any burrs that may be on this. So now that we've got all the burrs cleaned up off this draw straw, we're going to install it into the tank. So you're going to use your supplied washers and lock nut, and we're going to insert it and then fish the washers and nut up the tube. It may be easier for you guys to spin this to get most of the slack out of the threads, and then final tighten with a wrench. So one thing to note before you final tighten your draw straw is kind of get an idea as how you're going to route your hose. We're going to go into this protective shielding and run it down the side of the tank. So we're going to kind of go ahead and angle it that direction. We're going to tighten it up and then give us a better idea how we're going to make this suction line. So since we're going to do a lot of the final install on the lifts and in the air, I'm going to go ahead and kind of pre-start the suction and return lines. So we're going to put our fitting on here to assemble one side of the suction line, and then we're going to show you the modifications needed to do to the module for the Airdog return. We'll press that fitting in and drape the line down so we don't have to get back up here once it's in the air. So now we got this fitting installed in our hose. We're going to go ahead and tighten it up on our draw straw here. Now that we got that nice and tight, we're going to show you the needed modifications for this fuel module. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to turn the factory pump outlet into the Airdog return. So we're just going to need to take this line out completely so the Airdog return can freely return back into the tank. So we got our cutters here. And we're just going to cut both sides of this. There's no further modifications needed as the Airdog harness will disable power. We just needed to make sure that this port was free and clear for the Airdog return. Now that we got that slight modification done to the module, we're going to reinstall it back into the tank. Take note of this locating tab, as the tank will tell you on this application that's facing directly towards the drive shaft. That'll make sure that your arm is moving in the appropriate range and everything with no obstructions. So we'll fish this in there, We'll get the fuel module drop back in and connect all factory connections except for the factory outlet line. So you're not going to want to connect the factory wiring harness back to the module, as the Airdog harness will connect to this, as well as you do not want to hook this factory line back up. We're actually going to want to remove this plastic retainer so the Airdog fitting can be accepted onto this later. You do want to reinstall the factory smaller of the two, as this is the engine return and is not to be modified. So as I said earlier, we're going to pre-assemble half of this return line so when it's in the air, we're not having to fight it later. So we're going to press in a 90-degree quick connect fitting. It's going to connect directly to the module and follow the same routing as this suction hose that we just made. So we're going to get this 90-degree hose pressed, this 90-degree fitting pressed into our 1/2-inch hose and begin the assembly of the return line. So now that we have this 3/8 90 pressed into our 1/2-inch hose, since this line's not needed anymore, I'm actually going to trim it back about right here, just so it's not in the way of any of our new line routing. You're going to connect that onto the sending unit, and we're going to route these together, and using the supplied zip ties, we're going to make these nice and clean and route to the Airdog lift pump towards the front of the vehicle. So now that we're kind of figuring out the routing of our suction line, I'm going to go ahead and thread on the remaining 5/8 swivel so we can determine the length we need to cut this hose. Go ahead and cut it, and then press our fitting in. So now that we've gotten this fitting installed, go ahead and tighten it up. And you're going to use a 1-inch wrench to get this nice and snugged up. So now that we have our suction line finished up, we're going to finish up our return line. I kind of loosely placed one of our 3/8 90s up here to determine the length I would like to cut this. So now that we've figured that out, grab our cutters. We're going to pull it back, and I'm going to install that 3/8 90 fitting to finish out your return line. So now we're going to remove the factory injection pump fitting. The quick connect's a little hard to get to the way that it's angled. So we're just going to go ahead and take a 17mm wrench and remove the fitting from the injection pump, and we'll get the quick connects later. Now that we just installed our WAP102 directly into the CP3 for the Airdog outlet inlet to the CP3, we're going to assemble that line. We're going to take a 1/2-inch straight, we're going to oil it up, press it into our hose, and then fish it down towards the Airdog pump, where we'll cut it to length and press in the second fitting. So now that we have the Airdog system plumbed, we're going to begin the installation of our wiring harness. I went ahead and dropped down the wiring to the actual pump assembly and to the tank. You just want to be careful not to interfere with your steering shaft. Now we have our positive and negative battery connections. We're going to get that hooked up. We're going to mount the relay, and then we'll get you back underneath the truck to to show you the connection at the tank itself as well as the Airdog. So now that we're back underneath the vehicle, just wanted to show you quickly, we did switch to a Metro Pack style connector on the Airdog harness. It's just as simple as you would think, just direct plug and play. We want to go ahead and get that connected so we can get our wiring harness routed how we would like. We're going to go ahead and zip tie it nice and clean down the hoses that we've already routed. We'll throw this up and over on the fuel tank, drop the truck back down, and then connect it on top of the tank. So now, as you've seen, we've connected the positive and negative battery terminals at the battery. We've routed the Airdog harness down, connected it to the pump assembly itself. Now we're down at the tank. As you'll notice, one connector on the Airdog harness is going to be just as the factory module. You're going to connect that to your factory wiring lead that comes off the chassis harness. Slide your lock over, and then there's going to be a separate plug from the Airdog harness that goes to the module. What this does is it retains the factory ECM prime sequences and also disables the power to the pump in the tank as we're no longer using it. So this will, as factory, turn the key on, run for 2 seconds. If you bump the vehicle but do not start it, it will run for 30 seconds. That's how we're gonna prime the vehicle after we get the zip tied up and get the Airdog primed. Alrighty, we're back in the vehicle after we have the Airdog all plumbed up as well as wired. So we're gonna go ahead and prime the Airdog. Like I told you guys earlier, this retains the factory priming sequence. So whenever you turn the key on, it's going to power the pump for 2 seconds. And if you bump the key and do not start the vehicle, it will run it for 30 seconds. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to bump it, not let the vehicle start. The pump is going to run for 30 seconds. You'll hear a tone change in the pump. Once you hear that change, you'll be able to start the vehicle. It may take a couple key cycles as this is a completely fresh install. Now that we got this truck all primed up and running, we're going to back it back into the 2-post lift, set the bed back on it, and go for a test drive. We just got this installation all wrapped up on our 2007.5 Dodge here. This install video will be applicable for all you guys 04.5 to 2018. This is the DF-220-5G. If you have any questions, drop us a comment below or shoot us a phone call.